Picked capture loading. Heretic Astartes detected.
You were warned, citizen.
Greetings, Imperial citizens. Back once again, having escaped the interrogator chaplains, it's your host, Jimmy. Green or black? Well, while this might sound like the beginnings of an advert for a luxury chocolate brand, it is in fact my internal musings about which colour to paint my fallen angels.
As you may or may not know, the current Dark Angels chapter fight clad in forest green armour, but in the Rogue Trader days they were depicted in black, which all changed when this piece by Jim Burns showed them in black armour reflecting an orange sky, which happened to show up as green. After some confusion, the black armour was retconned as something they wore before the Horus Heresy.
A fairly recent issue of White Dwarf, and by fairly recent I mean more than 3 years ago now, revealed that the Fallen can be found fighting in the black of the old Dark Angels Legion, but also sometimes in the forest green of the new Dark Angels chapter. So the question remains, green or black?
Please sponsor us, green and blacks, thank you.
Oh, I've got 4 in my mouth.
After much deliberation, I have decided to paint my Fallen in black armour, mostly to distinguish them visually from regular Dark Angels, as they're not heavy on the corruption side of things. After an undercoat of Chaos Black spray, I give all the edges of the armour panels a fairly chunky highlight of Citadel's Incubi darkness. I followed this with a slightly thinner edge highlight of Stegadon's Scale Green. Next, I applied a highlight of Reaper's Ashen Blue to the corners of the armour plates. The armour was then finished off with a dot highlight of Reaper's Blue Flame. The ribbing on his rubber undersuit was painted with Reaper's Shadowed Stone. This was then carefully highlighted with Stone Grey. All of the metal parts on the model were painted with Citadel's Leadbelcher. This was finished off with an edge highlight of Ironbreaker. Just want to mention that the channel now has a Patreon, and if you feel like supporting Splat, you can do so for just £1 per month. Otherwise, your likes, comments and shares are all very much appreciated and help the channel grow. All of the metal areas were then given a unifying wash of Nuln Oil mixed with Lahmian Medium. And with that, it's time to move on to the robes.
This thing's ridiculous, I can't see anything. Seriously, I don't know how the Dark Angels wear bed sheets everywhere they go.
The robes were base coated with Citadel's Mephiston Red, as were any other red bits on the Mini. This was then carefully shaded with a mix of Mephiston Red and Incubi Darkness. Next, several highlight layers were added, mixing Mephiston Red with Reaper's Brilliant Red, moving up to Brilliant Red on its own. A final edge highlight of Brilliant Red mixed with Lava Orange finished the red areas off. Leather areas were base coated with Reaper's blackened brown. This was highlighted by adding Reaper's chestnut brown to the mix, and then by doing a further highlight with chestnut brown on its own. A final dot highlight on the corners was done with Reaper's orange brown. The wax on the purity seals and the eye lenses on the helmets were given a coat of Reaper's forest green. This was then highlighted with Reaper's clear green. Let me make this clear. Clear green is not clear. It is clearly green. It is not transparent, which I feel Reaper aren't being transparent about, with such a clearly deceptive name as clear green. It is just a poorly named but opaque paint, and we can see right through what they're doing. Where was I? The parchment on the seals was painted with Reaper's faded khaki. They were then given a wash of Citadel's Skeleton Horde contrast paint. Successive highlights were built up by slowly mixing linen white into the khaki until it looked like yellowed paper. Really thin lines of black and brown were then added to look like writing. All the bronze parts of the models were painted in Reaper's old bronze. Bright turquoise was then mixed with Lamian medium and washed over the bronze bits to make a patina of verdigris. That's a really good name for a band, Patina of Verdigris. Anyway, the process was then repeated with Siren's Song, focusing on the deepest recesses of the bronze where the corrosion would build up. Skin bits were painted with Reaper's tawny flesh, which was then given a diluted wash of Citadel's Guilliman flesh contrast paint. The skin was then re-highlighted with tawny flesh. The white emblems and symbols on the shoulders were given several thinned down coats of Azirian sand, and a thinned black wash applied around the edges. This allowed surface tension to pull the wash into the gaps between the wings and covered anywhere that I'd slipped with the white. The sand on the base was painted with chestnut brown. This was dry brushed twice, first using faded khaki and then aged bone. The rocks were painted grey, and then the edge of the base was given a couple of thin coats of Citadel's Steel Legion drab. The minis were sprayed with a coat of the always amazing Winsor & Newton matte varnish. Don't tell them though, it's not for us miniature painters, it's for professionals, okay? The eye lenses and any wet bits were painted with a gloss varnish. Leather and wax bits were given a coat of satin varnish. To finish off the base, grass tufts of various colours and leaves were superglued on top of the sand. And with that, the model is complete. Let's take a look.
So thank you for tuning into another episode of Splat Hobbies. I've been your host, Jimmy. I had great fun painting these Fallen Dark Angels. I hope you enjoyed watching along. Comment below whether you would go for green or black armour on your Dark Angels. I think there's a solid justification for either. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, if you feel like financially supporting the channel, please head on over to our Patreon. For just £1 a month, you can help cover the cost of the channel and help keep us going. If that's something that you feel you'd be interested in, then the link is in the description below. So until next time, may your bristles never fray. See you later.